guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be my September TBR, and now for the month of September, I am so excited. I'm so excited for fall. I'm so excited to start gearing my reading towards darker, more atmospheric books. Truly my favorite time of year. It's my favorite time of year to read. Though ironically, I feel like I'm so excited about the season, I'm having a hard time like honing in on exactly what it is I want to read. That being said, I do have a collection of books I am very excited about, but I feel like my mood reading is on an all-time high, so some of these books might get shuffled around, but nevertheless, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the books. The first book that is on my TBR I am definitely getting to, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I have a few Silvia Moreno Garcia books I have not read yet, and this book not only is one I'm dying to get to, it also just feels one that is so apt and perfect for this fall season. This is this author's like Gothic horror story, and if there's one thing we all know I love outside of just this author in general, it's a Gothic horror story. Hopefully a strange and unclear romance at the heart of it. I love a murky, am I supposed to hate this person or love this person plotline, you know what I mean? In this story, we follow our main character Naomi, who is a very glamorous and beautiful socialite who's like the life of the party where she lives. At the beginning of this book though, she receives a rather distressing letter from her newlywed cousin begging her to come stay with her for a time being, as the house that she has just recently moved to is apparently like ruining her life. So Naomi packs everything up and goes to the high place to stay with her cousin. And when she gets there, she finds that her cousin's new family is living in a house that's kind of like crumbling apart around them, and the longer she stays, more mysterious things begin to happen, and the house is seemingly beginning to invade our main character's dreams. Add a very strange, brooding, dark, and handsome new husband. Things get weird quickly, and I just want to read this book right away. I'm definitely in like a Gothic horror romance sort of mood right now. I cannot get enough of these stories, and I love Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing so much, and I feel like I'm gonna really enjoy this book. The next book I want to get to is The Graduate by Naomi Novik. I read the first book, A Deadly Education, kind of on a whim in the earlier parts of last month, and I really liked it. This, I want to say, is perhaps a YA fantasy series, but it has a magic school setting. I really love the characters, the plot, the character dynamics, like everything about it really hooked me. This book is set in a place called the Cholemans, which is a very dark and dangerous magical school. Here, the students basically go to classes, train in their magical upbringing, and there's no teachers, there's no specific line of work, but still there are assignments, and they kind of have to power through to try to graduate. In this world, being a magic user is actually incredibly dangerous, and especially when you're young and not having a full handle on your magic yet. The book sort of describes young magic users as eggs waiting to be cracked by monsters. At the Cholemans, you have basically a 1 in 4 chance of surviving, so still your odds aren't fantastic, but if you don't attend, you have something more like a 1 in 20 chance of surviving. Monsters roam the hall of the school, looking to basically take advantage of a lost and wayward student who's not paying attention, making basically everyday life incredibly difficult in the Cholemans, and also creating situations where things like alliances and powerful and rich families sort of grouping together try to increase their advantages and making it to the end, making our main character's life incredibly difficult because she is a loner, not really looking to make friends at all, and also has incredibly powerful dark magic, which she's also not trying to use. I really enjoyed the first one. I found the magical school setting to be really interesting. The main character is so likable despite how hard she tries to be not likable to everyone around her. Seeing friendship sort of form in a begrudging fashion, and the magic and the action of this book was really compelling. So I really want to get to book 2 this month. I just found myself flying through the first one, so I'm really curious to see where the story is going to take us next. Another book I really want to get to is Wayward by Amelia Hart. I feel like this book could be a really good sort of fall leaning read. I also feel like this is going to be rather emotional and more so a heavier read as well. This book basically parallels the lives and experiences of 3 different women through time. The first woman we're introduced to is in 2019. Her name is Kate, and she, at the beginning of this book, flees to a cabin that was gifted to her from her great aunt. She hasn't been there in many years, but she flees there now to escape an abusive partner. From there, we shift to 1619, and we're introduced to Athla, who is currently on trial for being a witch in the small village that she lives in. And lastly, we're introduced to Violet in 1942, and she longs to have the robust education of her brothers, but she is straitjacketed blanketed by societal conventions and trapped in her family's crumbling manor. I believe the narratives of all of these different women actually become intertwined in some form or fashion. Again, I've heard really excellent things about the writing and just the overall like concept of this book, so I'm looking forward to picking it up. I also think it centers witchcraft in some capacity, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But yes, I'm really looking forward to this. It's short and I feel like it'll also be a quick read. Next book that is on my TBR is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This book came out at the end of August and I just did not get to it, despite the fact that it was on my August TBR. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the past 2 years. I loved the first one, which was She Who Became the Sun. This is like a historical fantasy series. I just love this series so much, from the historical influence and that intersection with fantasy to just having such a compelling cast of characters with a lot of gray morality and just a lot of inclusion and discussion about queerness within this time period too. But in the story, we're first introduced to our main character Zhu, who is the youngest child and the only daughter to a poor peasant family. At the beginning of this book, tragically, her whole family actually passes away, so she actually decides to take on her brother's identity. She travels to a monastery, gets education there, and then begins to get involved in revolution and rebellion, and she sort of moves up the ranks rather quickly. This, though, is a multi-POV fantasy book, and again, it's just absolutely riveting. I love Shelley Parker Chan's writing style. I love the concept of this series so much. I need to read book 2. I've heard such good things about it, so this is also a book that's on the top of my TBR. Another sequel I really want to get to this month is A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. I love Rebecca Ross. Obviously, Divine Rivals is a book I've read this year and adored. I also have read the first book of this, which is A River Enchanted. This series is a perfect example of a very lyrical, beautifully atmospheric fantasy story that centers characters, their sort of complex interactions, and has a dash of romance, which I personally adore so much. But this story actually centers our main character, who is a bard, and he is from a very strange island, which he left 10 years prior to become a bard. But at the beginning of the first book, he's basically called back home to help in an investigation because children on the island are going missing. This island in which he is from is a very strange and peculiar place full of magic. Many generations prior, a curse basically struck the land because 2 different groups of people living here basically hated each other, resulting in a curse where on one side of the island it is bountiful with food, it's very lush, but the magic itself is very dangerous and hurts the magic user, where on the other side of the island the magic is very strong and powerful with limited consequence, but the land itself is barren. So when our main character arrives back on his home, he gets wrapped up in this investigation and he has to work with his childhood nemesis to do it. It's full of so many complex character interactions. As I already said, the writing is beautiful, this sort of really heavy, atmospheric, elemental sort of magic vibe, lots of storytelling. The ending of the first one also was rather gripping, so I need to see where the story is going to take us next. I just really love this author's writing style. It's so gripping, so I feel like this is a perfect fall read too. Next up, I have Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Yes, 2 books by this author on my TBR for this month. I just love her writing, and I'm trying to catch up on her entire portfolio of books, and I only have a few left. This is described to be like a neo-noir story with vampires, and that combination of things just immediately sold me right away. But this story is set in Mexico City, which is described to be an oasis in a sea of vampires. In it, we're introduced to our first main character, Domingo, who is described to be a lonely, garbage-collecting street kid who's just trying to get by and survive, until a heavily jaded vampire on the run comes crashing into his life, and they go on a journey together. I love a journey story. I love a journey story centering 2 unlikely companions. I love the concept of this book with vampires and all of that. I feel like this is going to be incredible. I always love this author's work, so I'm expecting to enjoy this. It also seems to have really good dark vibes. I love neo-noir stories. Again, 10 out of 10 concept, per usual. I need to see how this book plays out. The next book that's on my TBR is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I've heard such amazing things about this book. One of my friends, Max, is highly raved about this ever since he read it. It's also described for fans of Cloud Atlas and Station 11, both books kind of known for their narrative style with disparate point of views and really human experiences coming together to weave this beautiful tapestry, which I think this book also kind of utilizes, which is a personal structure that I enjoy so much. But this book, I believe, follows a myriad of different characters, and I think initially it starts in 2030 when a grieving scientist scientist travels to the Arctic Circle to continue his recently passed daughter's work. There, he basically uncovers an ancient girl who died of an ancient virus. From here, this virus is actually unleashed onto the world, reshaping everything on Earth as we know it. And I believe we also follow a variety of other characters who are now going to be touched by this sort of changing and altering world. I heard this book is written so beautifully, like the lyrical prose will be something that will really stick with you. I also hear that the concepts of this book is one that will really stick with you. I feel like this could be a new favorite. I already know structurally this is a type of book I tend to always enjoy, and I'm excited to check out a new author who I've only heard fantastic things about. Next book that's on my TBR is a horror option, which I feel like is needed. It is fall. I need something a little spooky, scary, you know what I mean? So I have My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I love this cover. I also love this concept. It seems so campy and fun while still hopefully packing a bit of a spooky punch. This story follows two high school best friends, Abby and Gretchen, who have been close since the 4th grade. But after an evening of skinny dipping gone wrong, Gretchen begins to act different, like very, very different. So Abby, her best friend, concerned for her, begins to investigate, leading her down many different, very surprising roads, also leading her to the realization that her best friend needs an exorcism. And so begins the story. This book just sounds weird and fun and hopefully a little spooky. I love what appears to be lots of 80s vibes. It just feels like it could be like an 80s summer horror sort of situation, and I am so excited to pick this book up. Next, I have a couple new fantasy series I'm looking to start this month. Both of them are really calling out to me, and I've heard such excellent things about them. The first is Malice by John Gwen. I've had this book on so many TBRs, it's almost embarrassing at this point. I need to get to this book, is basically what I'm saying. This is the first book to a bloody, multi-POV fantasy tale, and if there's anything I know about John Gwen's writing from what I've encountered in other series, this man can write combat and write it well, but it will be graphic and descriptive. But this book is set in a broken world after the result of a very bloody and prolonged clash between men and giants, and it appears that giants might be stirring once again. In the series itself, it appears we're following 4 very distinct perspectives who are all fighting or involved in combat for their own very specific reasons. Some of them are looking for power, some of them are trying to run from their very murky past. I'm looking forward to this. I love a multi-POV fantasy world. This seems like it's going to be rather entertaining. I especially love a fantasy setup where it's like gods versus humans. I always think from a trope point of view, it creates some very interesting situations. And the next book I really want to read is The Emperor's Blade by Brian Staveley. This book just sounds like something I would really enjoy. It's another multi-POV fantasy series, but this one seems to be very political, which I love. Scheming, backstabbing, not knowing who to trust, like double meaning in the language as I'm reading it. I just love political fantasy so much. But the concept of this book also sounds really cool and dark, if I'm being honest. But basically this book opens after the emperor has died. He has maybe even been killed off. From there, we read from the perspectives of all of his children. First is a son named Valen, who is an ocean away after his father's passing. He has been training to be like a powerful warrior his entire life, and he knows he needs to get back to the capital to protect his siblings, but he's also not sure if he's able to do it because he doesn't know if he can trust the people who are currently surrounding him. We also follow the daughter of the emperor, who's currently investigating her father's murder in the capital city. And lastly, there is the heir to the throne, who has been training in a remote monastery for most of his life. And when the people come to like collect him, he doesn't know, 1, if he's ready to even take on this power, and 2, if he can trust the people that are bringing him now to the capital. Again, this seems to be like a sibling story who they might be working together, but ultimately, like, I'm not even sure if they will prolongingly work together, if you know what I mean. Seems like a very murky and dangerous political scenario. I am pumped to read this. And the last book that's on my TBR is Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. This is said to be very strange, but also very delightful. Based on the synopsis, it also seems like a very atmospheric, very lyrical, forward, sort of strange fantasy tale, which I personally love very much. This follows our main character, Zoe. And down the alley of a small coastal town named Mallow lives the Delois, which is a very old and beautiful, like, apartment apartment building. And our main character Zoe has arrived at the Deloisp after her mother has passed away. I believe she's inherited her mother's apartment there, so she might be moving in and like going through her mother's belongings. When she arrives, she realizes that the tenants of the Deloisp are all very peculiar and they all have very strange backgrounds and stories, but kind of collectively, they all kind of have something in their life that is preventing them from moving forward or finding happiness. From there, Zoe becomes entrenched in this very strange place, and I sort of believe that's where the story unfolds. This book seems like it's going to have lots of different narratives and stories expressed. I feel like it's going to be peculiar, but also possibly heartwarming and emotional. It's said that Other Birds is filled with magical realism and moments of pure love that won't let you go. It just seems like something that could maybe balance out some of the darker reads I'm also getting to this month, like emotional, but hopefully positive leaning. You know what I mean? Alrighty guys, that is my September TBR. Please let me know down below some books you hope to get to this month, as I would love to know. There are definitely some new releases I don't have on here that might sway me. I also feel like there are some books I'm seeing all over online that also might sway me. Again, I am open, so let me know what you think I should read. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!